Hello and welcome to the SportsGrad podcast, your bite-sized guide to enter the sports industry. And joining me, as always, is the sparkling Ruben Williams. How are you, mate?
G'day, Ryan. I'm doing fantastic, thank you. And I'm feeling quite sparkly. We've had a massive week. We had our big announcement come out last week. There's been a lot of very kind and generous messages that have come through off the back of it. So I'm brimming, Ryan. I'm feeling great.
You are sparkling. Did you say brimming?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind that word. It kind of, maybe that's the next word to come out on the podcast.
I think so.
It was a big week. We're pretty stoked, aren't we? So
yeah, we're
excited for this episode as well.
Absolutely. More to come on the news that we made today with Geordie. So stick around for that.
Absolutely. If you want to learn more about who we are, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn, or if you want to ask us any questions, jump into the SportsGrad community. It's absolutely flying at the minute.
Yes, and a quick shout out to all of our members, in particular Siddharth Yellapelli, who has just picked up a new role with Social Sport and another fantastic internship with Golf Australia, where he did his interview on the putting greens down in Sandringham with our man Daniel Simon. So great to see that the connection has come through the community.
Absolutely. I saw a photo put on LinkedIn, actually. It was quite amazing. Just a photo of the golf course there. Dan Simons does it well.
Absolutely.
Down there, doesn't he?
He does too. So if you want a way to get your foot in the sports industry or just hire people quickly and easily and learn from the very best, there really is something for everyone inside the SportsGrad community. So be sure to get involved, Ryan.
Absolutely. Rose, we're going to start today's episode as usual with a quick tip to get a job in sport. If you're currently studying or you've just finished studying, having a postgrad qualification in sports management on your resume can give you a huge leg up over other potential candidates applying for the same role. So you want to pump up your resume and get specialised knowledge in sports behaviour, law, marketing, ethics, finance, governance and strategy, take a look at Deacon's postgrad qualifications. Their Master of Business in Sports Management is not one of, but the best one in Australia, ranked at number 1. So add a postgrad to your resume, and that's our tip for the episode.
And Sid, who we mentioned, he does that course, so it's no wonder that he's taken off with his career.
There we go. It's a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
Get in there.
Now, Ryan, last week we announced that SportsGrad have raised a seed funding round led by the founders of Spark Event Group with this unique collaboration, which we're going to dive into more in just a sec, that's going to create a unique pathway for young people to land jobs in some of the biggest sporting events in the world. And so, Ryan, when we say unique collaboration, this is how it's going to work. So we do a lot of professional development work. We provide networking opportunities. Spark Event Group, they provide a lot of contract and casual jobs. So what we're doing, Ryan, is we're going to combine the two, which is going to create a pretty powerful springboard for people to turn casual work with Spark into full-time careers through SportsGrad. So between the two of us, grads who come through our program, we're going to have this really accessible and comprehensive place to get world-class networking opportunities, world-class work experience, upskilling, and with industry connections as well to get full-time employment off the back of it. How good's that?
It's pretty good, Rose. It's a really exciting bit of news for the industry, and
absolutely.
You know, I know you've mentioned just now that the funding and work and the working relationship we're going to have with Spark. Obviously, we spoke last week to Shannon Gove and Bennett Merriman from Rostify to learn their story of growing Spark Event Group and now Rostify. Today, we're going to speak to none other than the Managing Director of Spark, Geordie Miles. So, Geordie, welcome to the SportsGrad podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. I think what you guys are doing is impressive. We are delighted to be involved, and I think it's a match made in heaven.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Geordie, we'll dive into a bit of your background in just a sec, but tell us a bit about the name Spark. How did you come up with that?
There's no big story about the name behind Spark. No, a lot of people have business names come up with some amazing idea or an idea at the pub. I think a lot of business names can mean a lot to the people running it, but not mean much to the people on the outside. From a Spark point of view, we wanted a name that was short, it was sharp, it was easy to say, it was easy to spell, it was available.
Yeah.
But most importantly, positive connotations, positive energy, and that's what Spark definitely has.
Amazing that it was available. I would have thought someone would have snapped that up.
Yeah,
Oh, it's a no-brainer.
Spark Electrical, Spark Accounting, there's a lot of Sparks out there, but from an event point of view, it was absolutely available.
Nice.
Love it.
Now, how many years have you been working in events for?
My first event I ever worked at was 2005, so 17 years.
17 years.
Yeah.
Now, we've spent the last 14 months getting to know you. You told us at one point that you once worked a 38-hour shift, which is an entire working week within the space of 2 days.
Yeah, and I smile now, but it's something that at the time I think I was proud of and probably spruiked. And I'll talk a little bit more in a second about the evolution of the events industry, but something that looking back was probably a little bit silly and something that shouldn't have happened. But I think the whole stereotype of the events industry that we work ridiculous hours, it's stressful, it's late nights, etc., is true to a point. Don't get me wrong, events are round the clock, but in terms of that stereotype, I think with Spark, we're trying to change the mould a little bit to become a much more sustainable industry from a resource point of view.
Well, tell us a bit about Spark. Who are they? What do you guys do? And why do you guys exist? Because it sounds like that sort of experience has really shaped who or what the company is today.
Absolutely. So we are a full event management and workforce organisation, so very unique in the industry in terms of providing event management services. So we own events, we run events end to end, right from strategy through budgets, procurement, right through to the logistics, site planning, documentation and delivery. And then obviously that delivery component, a lot of that is workforce. So we have two arms of the business, an event management team and then an account management workforce team providing workforce. So Spark as an organisation came from Event Workforce Group and Miles per Hour. So Miles per Hour is the company I started in event management. We had a workforce component as well, but the collaboration with Event Workforce meant that we were a full end-to-end event management and workforce organisation.
Two quality names off the bat. Miles per hour. I think I'm getting where that's coming from.
That's a nod to my motorsport background. Yeah. And I think, my journey has always been in motorsport from when I was young. The first event I worked at that I mentioned, 2005, was Gold Coast Indy, and then through some stints with surrounded by supercars and rally, and then the Australian Grand Prix. So the miles per hour, not only a nod to my last name, but the motorsport, the roots.
Nice one. So now you're working with the likes of the Australian Grand Prix, which is happening this weekend, as well as the Australian Open. You've got an incredible team of around 20 in South Melbourne with tens of thousands of casual staff all over the country who power, I think you mentioned over 1,000 events across the board. But in your early days, you said you never had the intention of actually running your own business. So where did that all begin?
Yeah, well, it started with turning a negative into a positive. So my whole life I wanted to work in specifically Formula One. It was motorsport, but definitely Formula One. So I found my way to Australia from New Zealand and onto the Gold Coast. I did look at the wonderful Deakin Uni, the sponsor of you guys, down in Melbourne, but opted to go to the Gold Coast, probably because I was 18, 19 years old, and what a place to be.
Bit warmer up there.
A little bit warmer.
It's hard not to look at Deakin, by the way.
Definitely.
Tough one too.
I was very impressed by my tour at Deakin, but opted to go to the Gold Coast, and I started studied sports management and internship, Gold Coast Indy, and obviously always wanted to work in the motorsport game. So worked my way up and then moved down to Melbourne and took a job at the Australian Grand Prix Corporation, working the operations team. I was at the Australian Grand Prix 4 or 5 years across operations and event entertainment, running obviously the Grand Prix and then the MotoGP, which the AGPC look after down at Phillip Island. I was early 30s, starting to think about my next move. The CEO at the Grand Prix was nice enough to introduce me to the guys over at Austin in Texas.
Wow.
So I flew over there off my own bat. A little similar to Bennett's story last week about flying to San Diego for a job interview. I had a little bit more experience, but flew over there. There was an opportunity there, so they offered it to me to move to Texas. So not only convinced my girlfriend at the time, but also her mum, my mother-in-law to be, that I think moving to Texas was a good idea. And we were ready to go to Austin. So I left the Australian Grand Prix Corporation, applied for my visa, and went through the checks and balances. And it turned out the visa was going to take longer than I thought, which I was okay with. Just take a couple of months and breathe, and then suddenly I didn't hear from them much anymore over in Austin. And finally, after a month of no contact, they contacted me and said, look, it's taking too long. We're finding someone over here for it. Sorry, see you later.
Out.
So,
wow. So you've just upended your life to go to the US.
Yep.
And then they've fallen through.
I'd left a corporation that I loved, a job that I loved in a sport that I loved, and I was out on the street. So that was 2015, started 2015.
How did you deal with that disappointment? Because you're obviously extremely keen to get over there, and like through no fault of your own, that's just been pulled away from you.
Yeah.
How did you that first couple of weeks, you're just like, holy hell, I've just missed out on this.
And the stakes are pretty high as well. Like your girlfriend's come with me. You've had the chat with the mother-in-law. Like it's a big thing.
I remember my departure message to all my colleagues at Grand Prix was, yeehaw, going over to Austin, Texas, and told everyone I was going, which was obviously of lesser importance. But for me, it was breaking down the future into short, medium, long term. And from a short-term point of view, it was, look, I love events and I'm passionate about the events industry, and I now have time on my side. So luckily, a major event like the Grand Prix introduces you to a wide network of people across all areas of the industry. So we're just chatting to people, and a couple of opportunities came up to use my skills and expertise in event management. And so I started a couple of freelance contracts. One of the first ones was White Night Melbourne, which is a huge event. So
I'm dressed pretty much in White Night Melbourne right now. I sort of head over there.
You'd look the part. Definitely an underrated event in the Melbourne events industry at the time, and now has become Rising, who we funnily enough still work with to this day. So took freelance opportunities across event management, and then a little bit of additional work on the side through contacts as a safety officer at some events, using my skills in that realm. And from there, that's where a couple of opportunities came up to grow or to start effectively a business in event management.
I think that just shows, it's never, you might think you're completely down and you've lost an opportunity, or like you're done and you're really thinking, oh, I'm done here. But there's always avenues to find a way back. You just said there's some good people you meet on the way. I'm sure anybody out there who's missed out on a job or something like that, there's always ways out. So I think it's a great story, how you're able to just pick yourself up and speak to people and find something out there. So
we can be quite closed-minded when we've got something in our head of where we want to go, and adaptability is the key. And that's not just in career and sport, it's across everywhere. You go into a footy match and you've got a plan of how to win the game, and sometimes that plays out, but more often than not it doesn't, and there's different paths to get to the end result. So it's the same in careers.
Yeah. You've mentioned that events can be pretty hectic, and it sounds like to be effective in those roles, you've got to be really quite composed. And so I'd imagine you've taken that composure from running an event into your own career situation, which has just fallen through, and applied it perfectly to be able to pick yourself up. But I guess with that in mind, like what else kind of makes you different, and why do you think you were ready to take on that opportunity to get straight back onto your feet? Yeah,
it was identifying quite early on when there were a couple of opportunities in the industry that came up in addition to what I was freelancing, and that's how Miles per Hour started. And there's probably two things. There was one, I'm passionate about events, and it was quite obvious that outside of, we talk about the big three events in Melbourne, we talk about Spring Carnival, Australian Open and Grand Prix, and obviously then there's AFL Grand Final and a lot of other big events, but the next tier down of events, whether it's council festivals, music festivals, fun runs, mass participation events, shows, whatever, I felt like the standard of events that the industry was delivering could be improved. I found that a lot of people that work on these big major events, from a career point of view, they're not going to go backwards and take that information, knowledge, IP to the bulk of other events. They would move from major event to major event, or overseas to the Olympics and that kind of stuff. So I felt like the state of events could definitely be improved in terms of the planning, the documentation, processes and delivery. The other thing that was apparent quite early from me, and it was how Miles per Hour started, our first client, was I was a safety officer at one of the council events, and I saw the crew rolling around doing the jobs, and I didn't think they were that good. And I said to the event manager, I said, "Who are the crew?" She said, "Oh, we just get them from the security company." So once again, it was a few years later, but very similar to Shannon and Bennett's story last week about this. There was a hole there that needed to be filled. So I talked to that event manager at the council and said, "Hey, I could provide some better staff here." So that links to my first point, but the second point was I had a lot of mates and a lot of people out there that were looking for opportunities and events and wanted to use their expertise, and it wasn't happening. So from the very start of Miles per Hour, those two things were in my mind, and to this day with Spark, improving the events industry as a whole, end to end, and providing opportunities for staff is still paramount, and that's how it all started.
What I love about that is that by you performing a job that you absolutely love and care about, and in terms of like the tasks that you do every single day, it's created a hedge for you when things haven't gone to plan. So like we see a lot of people who will pick a certain organisation who they want to work for and put that up in the sky. Say it's, moving to Texas, and when that doesn't work out, that's the only thing that they're holding on to. Whereas for you, you've been extremely grounded in running high quality events, not just for major tournaments, but for grassroots councils, as you say, which has allowed you to kind of clearly see like, all right, well, if this place won't take me, I know exactly what I need to do somewhere else, which has allowed you time to springboard almost immediately. Like I was almost expecting you to say, I was really down and, depressed for a little while and it was hard to get back up. But because you were so grounded in why you love events and what you wanted to do, it sounds like it was pretty obvious on what to do next.
Yeah, hindsight, the path cleared its way. The early days as well, I was very fortunate that because I was using my skills and I was freelancing, growing the business didn't require too much risk. So I was freelancing and doing my work, and then we were providing workforce on the side. I brought on a staff member when we picked up a couple of contracts, so I needed a little bit of help, and then gradually over time I just decreased the amount of time I was spending freelancing and growing the business. So from an equilibrium point of view, it sort of worked out okay at the start with minimal risk, and we're quite lucky we're in a services-based business where the overheads can remain quite low from the start.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think there's a great career direction message in that find the thing that you love to do every single day rather than, the organisation name that you want to work for.
Well, and you mentioned those tier one events, but there's just so many of those ones that are, yes, they're below the Australian Open, but they're still huge. What was the event we spoke about before that's going on this weekend on Albert Park Lake?
Oh, that
runs in the Yarra.
Yeah, so inflatable regatta. So it's a set of events we own.
Like that event.
Yeah,
amazing.
We've just run our first inflatable regatta as an event we own on the weekend just past, which was successful.
Love it.
So there is, and it's important to understand the big picture of what events are. They are experiences for people, and especially after what we've gone through the last couple of years, the importance that events play in people getting together, people enjoying themselves, people living life to the full. And yes, when you get into the industry, you realise that there are events you've never even heard of that are really, really important to people.
Yeah.
That's so true. Like, I was having this conversation with Ryan on Monday about flying to Sydney for 15 hours to see Buddy Franklin kick his 1,000th goal. And that was an incredible event. And the only thing I have to compare it to is seeing Australia play Uruguay in 2005 and qualify for the World Cup for the first time in 32 years. And both of those atmospheres were incredibly inspiring to me. The first one kind of set me on a path to working in sport when I was 12 years old. This one just kind of made me appreciate how good sport is and how positive an impact it can create. And you're in that every single day.
I am, and I'm very lucky, and we are very fortunate that if you look back at your life highlights, a lot of them are part of your job or part of your career. You know, I'm married and I've got a little one, and I talk about, you know, my wedding day and the birth of my daughter and all that as life highlights. But a lot of the other ones in the top 10 are to do with my career and my job, and I think that's where we're extremely fortunate. And it's important to not forget that when you get there.
Yeah. What are a couple of those, just out of interest?
Yeah, my first Grand Prix that I worked at was an absolute highlight. I've been around motorsport my whole life. My dad raced bikes. I knew, I was back in New Zealand. The time difference means the races are on even later than here. So I was up on Sunday night and late to school on Monday and watching the Formula One. So 2011, working my first Grand Prix and being on the grid was, I'm getting spine tingles just now. Another event I freelance worked on when we were starting miles per hour was Argentina versus Brazil versus Socceroos, a little tournament they did at the MCG. And the Socceroos Brazil game with a packed MCG, lights off when the players are coming down the pitch. Coming onto the pitch is unbelievable as well. So there's many more. President's Cup a couple of years ago. In terms of an event that's delivered exceptionally well on the world stage, was another highlight.
Yeah, amazing.
For those who've never worked in events, what's it like? Because I know we mentioned at the start of the show, you know, you work that 38-hour shift. And I know you've got some, you know, a strong opinion on what an internal culture of what events should be like. You know, I think we can probably say no one should have to work 38 hours. But what is it like? Because I feel like there's sometimes a misconception about working in events.
Yeah, that's right. I alluded to it before. I think if you're coming into the industry thinking it's a 9-to-5 job, I mean, there are aspects of the events industry because we touch on so many areas that are much more business hours, but generally events and sports have a requirement to go over and above that. But as I mentioned before, I think the stereotype of us absolutely working ourselves to the bone and then obviously your career and the job you have has a shelf life because you just burn out, and that's something that I'm passionate about with our internal team now, that to be honest and say there is going to be weekend work, there's going to be times when there's long hours, and we've got Grand Prix this week and that's, you know, one of the big ones, but generally trying to shift that stereotype into absolutely burning yourself out and having to do all those long hours. So it still exists in that realm, but I think somewhere in between is probably the sweet spot, because we've got to be realistic here as well and realise that the event industry has gone through pretty tough times the last couple of years, and what we're facing now is something we've never seen before. So obviously there's always going to be an attraction to the sports and events industry because as individuals and people, we love sports and events, but making it an attractive career choice I think is really important from when people are starting uni and even before that, when, you know, we're talking to a year 11s and 12s about event management and sports management actually being a career.
Yeah. Is that something that you specifically touch on at Spark? Like you ensure that culture and environment is one that people want to be around for the long term?
100%. Yeah. I'm proud of our team and I'm proud of our culture. It's driven from everyone, not just the top down. And not only does that mean we are enjoying our work and fulfilling our work and fulfilling our purpose of the two I mentioned before about providing opportunities for young staff, but also improving the events industry as a whole. And I think if our core team are happy, that's going to happen. And I think over the journey as well, Spark, we talk so much about providing opportunities for our casuals, and then the work you guys are doing with SportsGrad of getting people onto that ladder. I'm also very conscious of the fact that we've got a core group of people as well that need nurturing and development and goals, and they've got a career to work on as well. So not forgetting that. And then as an extension of that, the work we do and the partners we have, the clients we work with, the events we do, the overall delivery is a lot better.
So for those casuals who are going to be rolling into the Australian Grand Prix this weekend, what can they expect? Are they going to be working 15-hour shifts, or what sort of measures have you got in place to make sure it's an enjoyable experience?
Well, it starts with when they first leave their door to come to the event, and it's no different to a patron. So I think the first thing that people coming to the Grand Prix will realise is it's such a big site and a big venue. And for those that haven't worked that event before or any event before, I think it's going to be a huge eye-opener, because you see events like that, they literally build a city for 2 or 3 months, for 4 days, and then they break it all down. So a huge eye-opener. But for us, we really focus on the engagement and the experience from before they even come to the event. So that's something that Shannon and Bennett did so well in building EWG. So as they said on your pod last week, there were labour hire companies, recruitment companies throwing people into jobs. But from our point of view, the communication, the engagement, the brand we're building, the work with you guys, the overall, we still say placement with a purpose at Spark, just like the EWG guys started over 10 years ago. And that is crucially important for those people to feel comfortable coming to work and feel like they're part of something. So it starts with that. So before they even come to the site, and then the whole process around how they check in, what they need to bring, who they're reporting to, what their job is, etc., is something else that we know that if you're young, that's what will make you a little bit apprehensive. So we focus a lot of time on that. With major events like that, 25% of the work we do is finding the workforce, recruiting the workforce, placing them into the positions. The rest of the time is engaging with them, communicating with them, briefing them, and working on the logistical process of managing the workforce on site.
Yeah. Awesome. So what's the longest shift that these people can expect to work then?
I think the longest at Grand Prix is 11 or 12.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's few and far between. That'll be more sort of supervisor level. So most of the roles are between anywhere from 5-6 hours to 8-9 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I've only worked the Grand Prix once before, and I was working as a casual scooping ice cream out of a vintage ice cream cart in the Porsche Lounge over turn 2. And that was an incredible experience, just going through an old ice cream job. But Ryan, you and I are going to be there. Geordie's got us involved to do some work on the Friday, I believe. So if anyone's working at the Grand Prix, look out for us. We'll be rolling around.
I can't wait.
Yeah, me too.
It's going to be fun.
I think the role you guys are going to play on Friday of going around and chatting to our staff, and a lot of them are listening to this, and a lot of them are SportsGrad members, but finding out what their experience is like and things that have gone well in terms of their overall not only position and role, but the overall experience, and things we can always refine and get better, or more information we can provide. So yeah, you guys will be part of that on the Friday.
I can't wait.
Love it.
You mentioned Bennett and Shannon and Event Workforce Group, which they spent 10 years building up. What was the reason to merge your own operation and event company with what they were doing?
Yeah, so I met the guys quite early on when Miles Proud started, and admired what they did and were doing. We would cross paths at events. They would be providing their workforce. We would either be doing event management or providing workforce in other roles, operations or site management roles, which they touched on. And then on the patron services, customer service side, we touched on. So there was only a small slither of crossover of what we both did, but generally we were separate. But we started when there were opportunities for us through our existing clients for activation staff or patron services or event staff, we would contract them in to assist us, and vice versa. So if they needed support elsewhere outside of their realm. So we were interlinked, and then there were even a few times when we pitched on work together. So whether it was tenders or just quotes, etc. So we started to talk through, we were actually having a catch up, and this is mid-2019, about how we go about the process of that moving forward. So if there are opportunities, are we just going to keep continuing partnering and working together, or are there benefits for them to go out and drive business, and for me vice versa? So we went to that meeting, and at that time we were tendering together on the Melbourne Olympic Park contract, which incorporated Australian Open. So it's turned into one of our two biggest contracts. So we were tendering on that together, and we ended up winning that, and that was the catalyst for us to go, hey, let's take a step back here. This looks like an opportunity to become one business. The guys had Rosterify humming by that stage, so there was focusing a lot of time on Rosterify. So the ability for me to come in and assist in combining the organisation into a new one and take what they had created at EWG so they could focus on Rosterify, which then links back to Spark in terms of engagement across the country and across the world. It seemed like the most obvious opportunity, so that's how it came about.
Were you expecting that offer when you rolled into that meeting that day?
No, I wasn't.
Walked in, walked out, partners.
That's right. And the process actually happened, and to Shannon and Bennett's credit, and the reason the three of us work so well at the moment, the process was quite seamless, to be honest. From a contractual point of view, from what we all wanted out of it, it made a lot of sense. So we just got it done, and it was done in a few months. And then January the 1st, 2020, we kicked off. And from the very start and part of the discussions, it was quite apparent that the industry didn't have something like this. And a lot of our events that we work on, a lot of our partners, a lot of our clients need just workforce, and a lot of them need just event management, but there's a whole raft of clients we work with that need somewhere in between, or a combination of both, etc. And it was also quite apparent from the start that the organisations we were working with really valued that they had event people and event management people that understood what they needed, what they were doing. On the workforce side, for example, they could say, here's a roster of positions we need filled, and they're comfortable that we could just look at a job description or even just a description of what the role is, and we'd understand what kind of people are needed. So that's where the link from running events from the very, very start and conception and creation right through to that last person on the ground, it didn't exist, and it was a huge opportunity for us to effectively create that.
So you've gone from upheaving your life in 2016 to starting to work for yourself, to turn that into a small business with a couple of staff from 2016 to 2018. By mid-2019, you're having chats about merging. Along the way, I believe you also got an offer for your dream job with the Formula One Grand Prix. How did you feel about that, given the way that everything was going?
Yeah, so that was before we even started talking to Shannon and Bennett. That was early miles per hour days, and that was a real line in the sand day for me, where even 3-4 years before that, if someone came to me with that opportunity, I would have thought, my whole career ambition is ticked, and I take that job and I'm happy, and what that progresses to, we'll see. So I was offered that, and there was probably 2 or 3 staff I had at the time at miles per hour, and we were doing some pretty cool things. So you talk about, picking yourself up from the Austin opportunity and working through opportunities and growth, etc. For me and my journey, that day was the day where it was, okay, if I'm not taking that job, there's no turning back. This is my future, and I turned it down, and I haven't regretted it, obviously to this day. But yeah, definitely I look back at that day as a line in the sand day.
So you've had a few sliding doors moments, then. It's like, if Austin doesn't fall through, then you don't come back in Australia, and if that doesn't go well, then you might end up back working at the Grand Prix. So it's incredible to kind of see how things have worked out. What do you think are some of the main things you've learned over the journey?
A lot. I think coming back to, in the events industry, we get extremely busy at times, and we face challenges no bigger than what we've faced the last 18 months. I think you've got to come back to what your purpose is and what our purpose is as an organisation. And those two things are often interlinked but separate. So what my purpose is from a career point of view and the path I want to go, but also the purpose of the business you're running. So important to come back to that, because we get in the weeds, we get deep into work, we get into the day-to-day, we get into the working with clients and dealing with our staff, etc. It's something that I have learned from Shannon and Bennett more than probably anyone about the pathway and the future, and making sure that you've got that clear. There's always going to be times when you start to veer from that a little bit and deal with things that are happening on the spot, but I think that's so important. So I've probably learned that the most. I think the other thing from a business point of view is to give things a go, to really, really have a crack. So we all think we're the most important person. We all think that what we do is the most important job. Especially what we've seen the last couple of years, we're not saving lives. There's doctors, there's nurses, there's social workers. There's a lot of people out there that are the real difference makers in lives. From us, 100%, we are creating careers. We are creating opportunities for young people. We're running events that are important to a lot of people. But I think from a perspective point of view, try things, do things. If things don't work out, it's okay. Pick yourself back up. You don't know until you know, and that's what I think is so impressive about what you two are doing in terms of creating what you're creating based on what's needed and seeing a whole. And to go back to my fantastic co-directors, Shannon and Bennett, something that they've always done as well, to create EWG and then Rosterify and then everything else they're going to be doing in the future, I think is a really good example of the difference you can make.
I think that's so true, and we're still very early in, right? We are constantly saying to each other, and I think with any startup, you can easily just veer. You can go in all sorts of directions. You can do it, whatever you want, really. But the one thing that we always do say is our purpose is to help people get jobs in sport. You just got to keep going on that line. So I think it definitely resonates. It's something that we try and do as much as we can.
You're right, yeah. Having a purpose provides a very clear framework on what to do when you're not sure what to do.
Yeah.
Which has been a really consistent theme of your journey, because when things haven't gone right, you've just referred to your purpose and thought, all right, how do I continue living that? How did you figure that out? Where did that come from? What sort of things did you draw upon to really understand this is what I should be doing with my life?
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. It's learnt, and it comes from opportunity, and it comes from small opportunities that you take or a decision you make which might seem outlandish at the time, and then it works out. And then the next one you take is slightly more bold, and also learning from the people around you and seeing what they do. Bouncing ideas off people, linking the two, being creative. I think over our journey, and similar to what the guys said last week in terms of putting goals in place that seem outlandish and then consistently achieving them, I think is a common thread around a lot of businesses. So, yeah, set goals. Take risks. Sometimes it doesn't need much risk, but make bold decisions about where you want to go and liaising with people and collaborating with people, and then if they start to consistently work out, you're on the right path.
Brilliant. And tell us about the future. What have you got planned next for Spark Event Group?
Yeah, the future's broken down into almost short term and medium term, and to a lesser extent long term. But the short term is leading, taking a lead role in the recovery of our industry. So we've been hit really hard. The state of the industry is very unique at the moment in terms of what we've faced in the past. So leading the charge in terms of coming back to our purpose. So a lot of people have left the events industry over the last couple of years, and some will come back and some won't. So in terms of the leaders of tomorrow and the event managers of tomorrow, really starting at the bottom and working with you guys to assist us with that. So where I mentioned before going even as young as year 11s and 12s and talking about the events industry, uni students, and giving them the casual opportunities to get experience in the industry, linking with you guys and the development and the training and the networking and everything that you guys do so well. So that's pivotal in terms of leading the charge. So the next thing is engagement with our database. So the database has changed a lot in the last couple of years. So communicating, engaging, being a sounding board is really, really important for us. And working with our partners and clients. So coming back to what I keep saying about improving the events industry and working with them and finding out what they need is really, really important. So yeah, once again, you've asked me a question. I've come back to probably the two purposes that we always come back to, and I think that's for the short term, it's that. And then our core team, we've got a lot of new people on our team. The culture's fantastic. Every single one of them has a career that they're developing and growing into. So working with them and nurturing them into what their future looks like as well, whether that's with Spark or hopefully we keep everyone for a while, but further down the line what they want to do with their lives.
Yeah, love it. Fantastic. Well, I think for us as well, like that core theme of sticking to your purpose and doing what's best to achieve your purpose was the same for us, and the same reason why when you guys approached us, we thought, how good's this? As Ryan said before, does this help us help other people get jobs in sport, yes or no? And you guys are literally handing out thousands of jobs in sport every single year. So to be able to kind of bring our knowledge of how students can leverage those opportunities to the best of their ability, and then introduce them to our partners like Netball Australia, who are advertising jobs through our community, to be able to say to someone as you are going out to schools in year 11s and 12s to say, hey, we've got some casual work. Now there's these people, SportsGrad, who you can network with all your favourite teams and leagues around Australia and come through a pathway to get a full-time job at the end of it, is just super, super exciting to be able to kind of add that to what we're doing. So, yeah, we couldn't be more excited.
And I'll just add to that, like, I'll speak for us both, but, when we came through uni, that didn't really exist, Like when I started doing sports management at uni, I thought, I'll do this to become a player manager. And what we've built now is sort of a pathway so that when you start university or when you finish school, doesn't matter if you don't get a uni, there's a clear pathway there where you can start in events and get that awesome experience, then come through SportsGrad, meet the people in all these organisations, and all of a sudden your network has grown tenfold. You've got all these opportunities, whereas before it just wasn't there. Like I didn't know where to find work in sport.
And it was incredibly frustrating too, because I had a lot of friends who were studying law and commerce, and they'd do a summer internship with KPMG. They get paid $35 an hour to do 8 weeks of work, and here I am, volunteering for nothing in sport, whilst there's no guarantee of a job at the end of it. Whilst KPMG are like, all right, you finish your second year of uni, we think you're great. When you've done another year of uni, 12 months later, there's a full-time job waiting for you at the end of it, like 6 to 12 months in advance before graduating. They've got that sort of certainty on their career in those industries, whereas sport has just never had that before. So to be able to kind of link the two pieces that we're doing together to create that certainty for students and make them feel like actually sport is a viable career where I can be incredibly happy in my job and experience some of the life highlights that you've had is incredibly exciting for us to think about.
It is. And the other thing to probably not forget is the breadth of opportunities there are for a career in sports and events. So I know, speaking for myself, when I was at uni, sport management and event management, I didn't know the difference, and a few people listening today probably are still in the same boat. So in event management, because we go to events, you've got no idea what goes into the organising, the planning of it until you do. I mean, people in my life still don't know what I do or what Spark does and their work involved. So you talk about event manager, which is such an ambiguous, open-ended term. That could be in the people actually planning the event. You could be an event manager at a cleaning and waste company. You could be an event manager in infrastructure, project management, engineering. workforce, obviously. An endless list of opportunities, and I think that's important for people because there's some soft skills that I think event management people have about staying calm and being positive and being organised is the big one. I think a lot of event managers, when they get to uni, they're like, oh yeah, well actually I was the one that organised this at school, and when we have an outing with my friends, I'm the one that organises it. I'm organised, and that's sort of a common thread. So there are soft skills there, but in terms of different skills that you have from a career point of view, there's not just one set of skills that you need to work in events. There's so much that can be transferred across the whole industry. So I think in terms of making young people aware of that, I think that's one of our first jobs. So, you can, and the biggest thing we say, I did it at a briefing last week for all our staff for Grand Prix, is we say 3 things when they go out. So make your mark, have fun, and the third one is learn. So when you're out there doing the casual shifts through Spark, learn what you enjoy, learn what you don't enjoy, bounce things off other people. You're literally out there on the job, learning on the job of what your career wants to be, and everywhere from the casual roles we do through to the contract roles we fill, we find people, finding their way.
Yeah. For someone wanting to work in events and specifically with Spark, how can they get involved?
Yeah, sparkeventgroup.com. So we obviously use Rosterify as our platform, so we encourage people to go on. So
slick platform, I might add.
It is absolutely. Good. So we have a set of EOIs, so recurring EOIs through our website that people can apply to, and then from there they're contacted and can set up with our with the Rosterify portal, and then all the opportunities come up there. But we're very conscious of making sure that we meet people, whether it's a phone call, video call, or in person, before putting them onto our database, because from me through to our core staff to the people we provide our partners with in terms of casual staff, it's really important that they know Spark and they live and breathe our brand and they're for the right reasons. So sparkeventgroup.com.
Awesome. Brilliant. And if you're part of the SportsGrad community, we'll also have those on our job boards as well. So very exciting time for anyone wanting to work in events.
That's it. Well, that's the beauty of the community that we're trying to create, is that all of our members, I would say, are there for the right reasons. And so that's why, those members can get some guaranteed shifts, because there are fantastic people inside there who are there trying to do great things and know why they're working in sports and events. So for those members out there, definitely get involved with Spark.
Yeah, it's important to note as well that obviously we're providing the casual experience side by side with the program that you guys are delivering. That puts them in a good position to then apply for jobs. But a lot of those jobs that they can apply for are through Spark as well. So we don't only provide casual opportunities for staff, but a lot of our partners and clients come to us needing contract resources, etc. We often have opportunities in our core team at Spark as well. So the majority of the people in our organisation that are in our office have come through EWG or Spark on casual shifts and worked their way up and are now with Spark. So there's opportunities within as well.
You don't need to look too far to see the clients that you work with as well. So if you're in Spark and you've done casual work, you've got some pretty good opportunities that are coming your way. So
absolutely. And for your SportsGrad members that are listening to this across the country, we're not just Melbourne, so we are national. We work on events across the country. So over the May-June period, so the middle part of the year, we're going to have our team heading around the country and meeting people. So touch base and we're coming to a city near you.
Brilliant. We'll be on that road trip as well, I hope.
I would have thought, we may as well get on the road. We need to do a bit of a road show.
We do, absolutely.
Geordie, it's been unbelievable, mate. Good to chat. We've obviously got to know you over the last 14 months, I think it is. Gee, time flies. But it's been unbelievable to chat and get to know you through the last 14 months, as I said. And we're unbelievably stoked to be working so closely with you because, we truly believe that both our businesses can do great things for people in the sports industry. So we're stoked, mate, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface, guys. So yeah, look, impressive what you guys are doing. Keep doing what you're doing, and we've got a lot of work to collaborate on together, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome, thank you, mate. Find us on LinkedIn, plus be sure to jump into the SportsGrad community as we've spoken about. We'd love to chat with you on there. Head to our website to join or head to the link in our show notes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.